To become competent at rectal palpation takes time and practice. Lots of practice. The first thing is to learn to trust what your hand is telling you, which is what we're going to practice with today's tutorial. It doesn't matter which hand you learn to palpate with. The benefits of using your non-dominant hand are firstly, that it doesn't have any preconceived ideas, and secondly, that it's quite useful to have your dominant hand free if you need to use an ultrasound or write something down, for instance. Honestly, it's a good idea to practice with both because you never know which way a crush is going to be loaded. It's very important to follow a logical sequence when performing a cow palpation. The first thing you want to look at is the external side of things. Is there a bull string or a bloody vaginal discharge, which could mean that she's in meta-estrus? Or is there lochia, for instance? When performing the actual palpation, the first thing you want to find is the cervix, which is fibrous in cows and feels like an apple core or mealycop. You want to determine what the diameter is of the cervix. Going forward, you want to palpate the uterine horns and assess their size, whether or not they're symmetrical. Is the tone high, i.e. is she in estrus, or is it low, i.e. is she in diestrus, and is there any fluid present? Next, you want to palpate the ovaries. You need to determine their size, the length and breadth and height. Remember, they are three-dimensional structures. And if there are any structures present on the ovaries, such as CLs or follicles. Once you've determined all these factors, you need to put them together and determine where the cow is in her estrus cycle. So what will you need? Well, some paper and a pen, a permanent marker, a ruler or measuring tape, a few items of different sizes to represent the ovaries, cling film, some Play-Doh, pantyhose or a sock, and a shoebox or something similar with a hole cut in it for your hand. Draw the outline of your hand and measure the following. The width of your palm, the width of your index and middle fingers, and the distance from your knuckle to the first and second joints of your index finger. The reason for this is that you're going to learn to hold the ovary with the proper ligament of the ovary between your index and middle fingers, so the ovary is held upwards towards your palm. This allows you to palpate the ovary with your thumb. The other measurements you'll need are the distances between your index finger and the joints of your thumb, which are very useful to determine the width of an ovary or uterine horn. Next, measure the items that you have gathered. You need to know the length, the width, and the height, i.e. a three-dimensional structure, and mark these with a permanent marker. Place the marked items into the cow box. Put the sock or pantyhose over your hand to simulate the restrictive feel of the rectum. Then find an item and measure it using your hand, and then check if you're correct. This next bit requires Play-Doh or something similar. There are many recipes online if you feel like doing this. Roll the Play-Doh into pieces about 12 centimeters long and 1.5 to 2 centimeters in diameter. This simulates a non-pregnant uterus. Wrap the pieces in cling film and add an ovary to one end. You want to grasp the uterus between your thumb and index fingers in order to be able to assess the diameter. Run your fingers down the length of the uterine horn until you find the ovary. The proper ligament of the ovary joins the ovary to the uterine horn. Trap the proper ligament between your index and middle finger so that the ovary lies on top of them, and you can then palpate the ovary with your thumb. There are a few signs that are highly suggestive of pregnancy in cattle, but may also indicate other things. The first of these are asymmetry of the uterine horns and fluid fluctuations. As you can see, the size of the uterine horns varies depending on the stage of pregnancy. If you're feeling particularly creative, you can mimic this using condoms filled with water, the inner one to represent the amniotic vesicle, to size, and the outer one, the uterine horn. I've only made models for early pregnancy up to 60 days, but feel free to experiment. On these models, you can practice feeling for two of the definitive signs of pregnancy, that is, membrane slip and the amniotic vesicle. Please note that membrane slip is the allantochorionic membrane, which we obviously can't mimic here, so please don't get confused with that and the amniotic vesicle. We're simply trying to demonstrate what it will feel like. Membrane slip can be felt from day 30 right until the end of pregnancy. It should not be attempted prior to this, as there is a danger of causing early embryonic death. Membrane slip is the atlantochorion and allantoic fluid slipping through your fingers, and can be felt by surrounding the uterine horn with your fingers and carefully slipping the whole thickness of the horn between your thumb and index finger, moving from the mesometrial to the antemesial side. The amniotic vesicle can be palpated very carefully between day 30 and 65 of gestation. This is done by placing your thumb on one side and your forefingers on the other side of the uterine horn. It feels like an egg-shaped structure that is very mobile within the uterine horn, rather like a bar of soap slipping through your fingers. Other definitive signs of pregnancy are obviously the fetus, which can be felt from about day 70 to 4.5 months, and then again from 6 months, and placentomes, which can also be felt from about day 70. The reasons that asymmetry, fluid, a CL, and fremitus are highly suggestive of pregnancy is that they can mean other things. Asymmetry and fluid could mean that the cow has some sort of pathology of the uterine tract, like mucometra or pyometra. A CL could mean that she's simply in diestrus. Fremitus can also remain for a little while after a fetus has died, therefore it does not indicate that the pregnancy is still viable.